Have you ever seen someone get slowly destroyed right in front of everyone? Not because they screamed, not because they fought back, but because they stayed quiet. Because they were just a waitress. Tonight, in one of the busiest upscale restaurants in downtown Chicago, a young woman was serving tables like any other Friday night. No one paid her any extra attention. She was polite, she was calm, she moved quickly between tables carrying heavy trays. But what none of the customers realized was that this quiet waitress had been recording everything on her phone. And the man who was about to humiliate her in front of the entire restaurant had no idea he was about to lose everything. This is the story of Emma Thompson. And the night Ryan Caldwell, a billionaire who loved showing his power, made the worst mistake of his life. Stay with me, because what starts as one arrogant comment will end with his entire empire shaking. It was a loud, busy Friday night at Bella Vista. Crystal glasses clinked. People laughed. The warm lights made the whole place feel expensive and alive. Emma Thompson had been working for almost 10 hours straight. She was only 22, with her dark brown hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Her feet hurt. Her back ached from carrying tray after tray. But her face stayed calm and professional. To everyone around her, she was invisible. Just another young waitress trying to survive the dinner rush and collect enough tips to pay her bills. But Emma wasn't like the others. She was a journalism intern at a small investigative news outlet. For months, she had been quietly looking into big companies that were hurting regular workers while making huge profits. This restaurant job was supposed to help her pay rent while she hunted for real stories. She had no idea that tonight the biggest story of her life would sit down right in her section. Emma wiped table 12 and straightened the napkins. Her phone was tucked safely in her apron pocket, voice memo already running. Something she did whenever she felt a conversation might matter. She took a deep breath and kept working. But what none of her co-workers knew was that Emma had been listening carefully for weeks, and tonight she would hear more than she ever expected. A little after 8 p.m., the front door opened and the whole restaurant seemed to notice. Ryan Caldwell walked in like he owned the city. 29 years old, tall, sharp navy suit, expensive watch that flashed every time he gestured. Behind him were 2 friends and a beautiful woman who laughed at everything he said. The host rushed forward immediately. "Mr. Caldwell, your favorite table is ready, sir. Right this way." Of course it was. Ryan Caldwell was the CEO of Caldwell Dynamics, a logistics company worth more than $2 billion. His name carried weight in this city. People moved faster when he entered a room. They were seated at table 12, Emma's table. She walked over calmly, notepad ready, voice polite. "Good evening. My name is Emma. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I get you started with some drinks?" Ryan barely glanced at her. He was already laughing loudly with his friends. "Bring us the 09 Screaming Eagle Cabernet, the whole bottle. And don't take forever." Emma nodded and turned away. Inside her mind, a small thought appeared. Another VIP who thinks the world revolves around him. But she pushed it down and went to get the wine. What none of them realized yet was that Ryan was in a very talkative mood tonight. And when Ryan felt powerful, he loved making sure everyone around him knew it. Emma returned to the table a few minutes later, carefully balancing the expensive bottle of Cabernet on her tray. She poured the deep red wine into Ryan Caldwell's glass with steady hands, the way she had done hundreds of times before. Ryan took one sip and immediately made a face. He set the glass down hard enough that a little wine sloshed onto the white tablecloth. "This tastes like cheap vinegar," he said loudly, his voice cutting through the conversations at nearby tables. "Did you shake the bottle, or did you just grab the first thing you saw in the back?" Emma kept her expression calm, even though she could feel eyes turning toward their table. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said softly. "Would you like me to bring a fresh bottle?" Ryan leaned back in his chair and laughed, a loud, mocking laugh that made his friends join in. "Look at her. She's apologizing like it's her fault the restaurant stocks garbage." He pointed at Emma with his wine glass. "Sweetheart, do you even know what a $2,000 bottle of wine is supposed to taste like, or do you just serve whatever they tell you to serve?" His date giggled. One of his friends smirked and added, "Come on, Ryan. She's probably never had anything better than grocery store wine in her life." Emma felt the familiar sting in her chest. The same sting she felt every time a customer talked down to her like she was nothing. But she didn't snap back. She never did. Instead, she simply nodded and said, "I'll bring another bottle right away, sir." As she turned to walk away, she heard Ryan say loudly behind her back, "See? That's the problem with these people. No pride in their work. They just want the paycheck and go home." The words landed heavy. Emma's hands tightened slightly around the tray as she walked toward the bar. Inside her mind, thoughts raced. He doesn't even see me as a person, just another nobody who exists to serve him. But he's talking, and my phone is still recording every word. She didn't realize it yet, but those cruel comments were only the beginning. A short while later, Emma returned with a new bottle and poured again, extra carefully this time. Ryan was now fully comfortable. The wine was flowing, and so was his ego. He started talking louder, gesturing with his hands like he was giving a speech to the whole restaurant. "You know what I did last quarter?" he boasted. "I cut 12% from the warehouse staff benefits, saved the company almost $30 million. The board tried to push back, but I told them, if those workers don't like it, they can find new jobs. There's always someone cheaper." His friends nodded along like it was the smartest thing they'd ever heard. Emma was standing nearby, refilling water glasses slowly, making sure she stayed close enough to catch every word. Her heart beat faster. She had read reports about Caldwell Dynamics, how delivery drivers were working longer hours with fewer safety checks, how injury rates were rising while Ryan Caldwell posted record profits and bought new yachts. Now she was hearing it straight from his mouth. But what none of the people at the table realized was that Emma wasn't just listening out of curiosity. She was connecting the dots. Ryan kept going, his voice growing even louder. "And the best part, my grandfather built this company with all those old-school rules about taking care of employees. I fixed that real quick. Loyalty is expensive. Efficiency is what matters. If a few people get hurt along the way, that's just the cost of doing business." He took another big sip of wine and looked straight at Emma, who was still standing a few feet away. "Hey, you, waitress. You've been hovering around here the whole time. You hearing this? Bet you wish you had my problems instead of worrying about minimum wage and tips." His date laughed again. "Ryan, stop. You're embarrassing the poor girl." But Ryan wasn't stopping. He was enjoying himself too much. Embarrassing her? She should be thanking me. At least I'm honest. Most people pretend they care about the little guy. I don't. I tell the truth. Emma stood there, tray in hand, feeling the humiliation settle over her like a heavy weight. Several tables had gone quiet now. People were watching. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked amused. The power imbalance was crystal clear. A rich, loud billionaire humiliating a young waitress in front of everyone while she was expected to stay polite and keep serving. But inside Emma's mind, a quiet voice whispered, "Keep talking, Ryan. Every word you say right now is going to matter later." She didn't smile. She didn't glare. She simply nodded and asked in her calmest voice, "Would you like me to bring the appetizers now, sir?" Ryan waved his hand dismissively. "Yeah, whatever. Just don't take an hour like last time." As Emma walked away, she felt the burn of embarrassment, but also something else, a growing sense that this night was different. Because while Ryan Caldwell thought he was just putting a waitress in her place, Emma Thompson was quietly building a case, and the recording on her phone was still running. Emma walked back toward the bar area, her tray feeling heavier than usual. The sting from Ryan's words still sat in her chest like a small stone. "People like you." She had heard variations of that line dozens of times in this job. But tonight it felt different. Because Ryan Caldwell wasn't just being rude, he was openly bragging about things that hurt real people. The same kind of people who sat in her section every night, exhausted from long shifts and low pay. She glanced down at the small bulge in her apron pocket where her phone sat. The voice memo was still running silently. "Keep calm," she told herself. "Just keep listening." But what none of the loud table realized was that every arrogant word Ryan spoke was being captured clearly. And Emma was starting to understand just how dangerous this conversation could become. A few minutes later, she returned to table 12 with the appetizers. She placed the plates down carefully, one by one. Ryan was now fully in his element. The wine had loosened his tongue even more. He leaned back in his chair, gesturing wildly as he talked to his friends. "You know what the real secret to success is," he said loudly, his voice carrying to at least 3 nearby tables. "It's not working harder. It's making sure other people work harder for less. Last year we switched to cheaper overseas suppliers for half our fleet parts. Saved us $42 million. Sure, a few shipments got delayed and some drivers complained about safety issues, but who cares? The stock price went up. That's what matters." One of his friends chuckled. "Didn't the union try to push back?" Ryan waved his hand dismissively, laughing. "Union? Please, I told them straight. If they keep complaining, we'll just automate more routes and cut even more jobs. Workers today are too entitled. They think they deserve raises just for showing up. My grandfather was soft with them. I'm not. I remind them every quarter who actually owns the company." Emma stood a few steps away, pretending to adjust silverware at the next table while her heart pounded harder. Inside her mind, the thoughts came fast and sharp. "He's talking about cutting safety checks just to save money. Drivers risking their lives on the road, while he sits here drinking wine that costs more than their monthly rent. And he's proud of it." She felt a quiet anger building, but she kept her face completely neutral. No glare, no reaction that he could use against her. Ryan took another long sip and continued, even louder now. "And don't get me started on employee benefits. We trimmed the health insurance package last month, saved another $15 million. Some older drivers got upset because their deductibles went up. But hey, if they can't afford it, maybe they shouldn't be driving for us. There's always younger, cheaper labor waiting in line." His date leaned in, smiling. "You're so ruthless, Ryan. I love it." Ryan grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. "Ruthless? Nah, smart. This is how you stay on top. You don't apologize for winning. You make sure everyone below you knows their place." He suddenly looked straight at Emma again, who was still nearby clearing a small plate from an adjacent table. "Hey, waitress, you've been standing around here a lot. You taking notes or something?" he said with a mocking smirk. "Bet you wish you could complain about your boss the way my drivers complain about me. But guess what? You can't, because without people like me, you wouldn't even have this job." A few people at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered something, but no one spoke up. Emma felt the public humiliation settle deeper this time. Her cheeks burned slightly, but she kept her voice steady and soft. "Would you like more wine, sir?" Ryan laughed loudly again. "See, that's the difference." She knows when to stay quiet and do her job, unlike some of my employees who think they can talk back. That comment landed like a slap. But what Ryan didn't see was the small, determined spark growing behind Emma's calm hazel eyes. She walked away slowly, tray in hand, mind racing. He has no idea. He thinks I'm nothing, but every time he opens his mouth, he's giving me more. And the recording kept going. The tension at table 12 was rising, but Ryan was too busy enjoying his own voice to notice. He kept bragging for the next several minutes, talking about upcoming contracts he planned to lowball, about how he planned to clean house with middle management, about how loyalty was overrated and fear was a better motivator. Emma stayed close whenever she could, refilling waters, clearing empty plates, asking polite questions that sounded innocent but kept him talking. "How is everything tasting tonight?" she asked once, voice perfectly professional. Ryan barely looked at her. "It'd taste better if the service was faster. But what do you expect? Another mini payoff, another cruel line captured." Emma felt the weight of it all pressing on her chest. Her own life wasn't easy. Student loans, rent that was always a week late, long hours that left her exhausted for her actual journalism work. And here was a man worth billions openly laughing about making other people's lives harder, just because he could. But she didn't let the anger show. She stayed calm. She stayed quiet. She stayed listening. Because deep down, a quiet voice inside her kept repeating, "This matters! Keep going! He's digging his own grave, one arrogant sentence at a time." And the entire restaurant had no idea that the quiet waitress they barely noticed was quietly holding a ticking time bomb in her apron pocket. The night had worn on, but Ryan Caldwell showed no signs of slowing down. His voice had grown even louder. The wine had done its job. He was now the center of attention at his table, and he loved every second of it. Emma approached once more to clear the empty appetizer plates. Her movements were still calm and professional on the outside, but inside her mind was spinning faster than ever. She reached for Ryan's plate when it happened. Eee! Her hand brushed the edge of the table just slightly. Nothing dramatic, just a tiny wobble from hours of carrying heavy trays. One small drop of red wine from the glass tipped and landed on the edge of Ryan's expensive navy suit jacket. It was barely noticeable. A tiny dark spot the size of a dime. But to Ryan Caldwell, it might as well have been a full glass thrown in his face. He shot up from his chair so fast that it scraped loudly against the floor. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he roared, his voice booming across the entire section of the restaurant. The whole dining area went quiet. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died instantly. Heads turned from almost every table. Ryan pointed directly at Emma, his face twisted in pure rage and disgust. "You stupid, clumsy idiot! Look at what you just did. This suit costs more than you'll make in your entire miserable life." Emma stood frozen for a second, the tray still in her hands. The tiny drop of wine stared back at her like a mark of guilt. Ryan wasn't finished. He stepped closer, towering over her, his voice loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Do you have any idea who I am? I come here to enjoy a nice dinner, and I get assaulted by some incompetent little waitress who can't even hold a tray straight. This is exactly why people like you stay at the bottom. Because you're useless." His date covered her mouth, half shocked, half amused. His friends laughed nervously, but the laughter felt forced now. The humiliation was complete. Emma could feel the heat rising in her face. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every eye in the restaurant was on her. Some people looked sorry for her. Others looked entertained by the drama. A few whispered behind their hands. She had been disrespected many times in this job, but never like this, never so loudly, never in front of so many people. Ryan kept going, feeding off the attention. "You should be fired on the spot. People like you don't deserve to work in a place like this. Go back to flipping burgers somewhere else where you belong." The words cut deep. For a moment, Emma felt small, exposed, powerless. But then, something shifted inside her. The burning embarrassment slowly turned into something colder, clearer, stronger. She slowly set the tray down on the edge of a nearby empty table. Her hands were steady now. She looked Ryan Caldwell directly in the eyes. No fear, no trembling voice, just calm, quiet strength. "Are you sure you want to keep talking like that, Mr. Caldwell?" she asked softly. The restaurant grew even quieter. Ryan blinked, caught off guard by her sudden composure. "What did you just say to me?" he snapped. Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. Instead, she reached into her apron pocket and slowly pulled out her phone. "I've been listening to everything you said tonight," she continued, her voice carrying clearly across the silent tables. "About cutting worker benefits, about using cheaper suppliers that put drivers at risk, about how loyalty is expensive and fear is better, about how replaceable everyone is, including the people who actually keep your company running." Ryan's face changed. The arrogant smirk faded. A flash of confusion. Then worry crossed his eyes. "You're bluffing," he said, but his voice wasn't as loud anymore. Emma tapped the screen. Ryan's own voice played back clearly from the phone. "We switched to cheaper overseas suppliers. Saved us $42 million. Who cares if a few shipments got delayed? Not my problem." The entire restaurant heard it. Another clip followed. "If they keep complaining, we'll just automate more routes and cut even more jobs. Workers today are too entitled." Gasps rippled through the room. Ryan's face went pale. His hands clenched at his sides. You recorded me," he hissed, stepping closer. "Delete that right now, or I swear I will destroy you. I will make sure you never work in this city again. Do you have any idea what I can do to someone like you?" Emma looked at him calmly, holding the phone steady. "I know exactly what you can do, Mr. Caldwell. But tonight, everyone else just heard what you really think about the people who work for you." The power in the room had shifted. Ryan, who had spent the entire night humiliating a nobody waitress, now stood exposed in front of dozens of strangers, his cruel words playing on repeat in the air. He looked around frantically. People were pulling out their own phones now. Some were filming. Whispers turned into shocked murmurs. "What the hell is going on?" Ryan muttered, his confidence cracking. But Emma wasn't finished. She took one slow step forward and said quietly, yet firmly, "You treated me like I was invisible. Like I didn't matter, but the person you ignore the most sometimes hears everything. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Ryan's mouth opened and closed, but no clever comeback came out. For the first time that night, the billionaire who loved showing his power looked truly powerless. And what none of the watching customers realized yet was that this was only the beginning of his fall. Ryan Caldwell stood frozen in the middle of the busy restaurant, his expensive suit suddenly feeling too tight. The tiny drop of wine on his jacket didn't matter anymore. What mattered now was the sound of his own voice still playing from Emma's phone, loud, arrogant, and completely damning. "You can't use that," he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "That's illegal. Give me the phone right now." Emma didn't flinch. She held the phone steady, her expression calm and controlled. "Actually, Mr. Caldwell," she said quietly, "in Illinois it's perfectly legal to record a conversation when you're part of it, and I've been part of this one all night." More phones in the restaurant were now pointed at the scene. People whispered excitedly. Some looked shocked. Others looked satisfied that the loud billionaire was finally getting called out. Ryan's face had gone from pale to bright red. He turned to his friends and his date, desperate for support. "Do something," he barked at them. "This crazy waitress is trying to ruin me." But his friends stayed silent. His date looked away, embarrassed. At that exact moment, a man sitting at a nearby table stood up. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a simple dark suit, someone who had been quietly eating alone the whole night. He walked over calmly and stopped beside Emma. "Excuse me," he said in a steady, professional voice. "I've been watching and listening to everything tonight." Ryan spun toward him. "Who the hell are you?" The man pulled out a business card and handed it first to Emma, then looked at Ryan. "My name is David Harlan. I'm a senior editor at Midwest Investigative Journal. We've been investigating Caldwell dynamics for the past several months. Safety violations, cost-cutting that endangers drivers, suppressed injury reports, everything you just bragged about tonight matches exactly what our sources have told us." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "And now, thanks to Emma, we have it all in your own voice, crystal clear." Ryan stumbled back a step, his legs hitting the chair. "This is blackmail," he yelled. "I'll sue you. I'll sue the restaurant. I'll destroy both of you." David Harlan shook his head slowly. "No, Mr. Caldwell. This isn't blackmail. This is accountability. Tomorrow morning, this recording will be part of our front-page story. And by the end of the week, your board, your investors, and every driver who works for you will hear exactly how you talk about them when you think no one important is listening." Ryan's hands were shaking now. The powerful, loud man who had spent the entire night humiliating a waitress was crumbling in real time. He looked around the restaurant. Dozens of people were filming. The once entertained faces now looked disgusted. His own table had gone completely silent. The power imbalance had completely reversed. Emma stood there quietly, watching it all unfold. She didn't smile triumphantly. She didn't gloat. She simply felt a deep, quiet sense of justice. David Harlan turned to her, his expression softening with genuine respect. "Emma, most people in your position would have stayed silent after being humiliated like that. They would have swallowed the embarrassment and kept serving. But you didn't. You stayed calm. You stayed smart. And you did what was right." He paused for a moment, then continued. "We have an open full-time internship position at the Journal. Real investigative work. Real stories that matter. After what I just witnessed tonight, I'd like to offer it to you. Starting next week, if you're interested." Emma felt a warm wave move through her chest. For the first time that night, her eyes softened just a little. She took a slow breath and simply said, "Thank you, Mr. Harlan. I'd like that." Ryan watched the exchange in disbelief. The waitress he had mocked and insulted was now being offered a real future, while his own world was collapsing around him. He tried one last desperate plea. "Look, we can fix this," he stammered, forcing a weak smile. "Name your price. 10,000? 20? I'll make it worth your while if you delete that recording right now." Emma looked at him one final time. Her voice stayed soft, but carried a quiet strength that filled the silent restaurant. "You still don't understand, do you? This was never about money. This was about the way you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you." She turned to David Harlan and gave a small nod. Then she reached behind her waist, untied her black apron, and folded it neatly. She placed it gently on the edge of Ryan's table. "In a room full of loud voices," she said quietly, looking straight at Ryan, "the one person no one thought was worth listening to heard everything." With that, Emma Thompson turned and walked toward the exit, her back straight, her steps calm and unhurried. No tears, no dramatic scene, just quiet dignity. Ryan Caldwell stood there alone, surrounded by the stares of strangers, his billion-dollar empire suddenly feeling very fragile. Tomorrow, the story would break. His board would call an emergency meeting, his investors would start asking hard questions, and the loud, arrogant billionaire who loved showing his power would finally have to face the consequences of treating people like they didn't matter. As Emma stepped out into the cool Chicago night, she took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And somewhere behind her, in the warm lights of Bella Vista, a single tiny drop of red wine on an expensive suit had started a chain reaction no one in that restaurant would ever forget. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you to be kinder, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more powerful, real-life inspired stories about hidden billionaires, quiet heroes, and moments that change everything, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next one. Because sometimes the greatest power isn't money. It's the courage to see what others refuse to.